I love nutrition because it gives my patients a sense of control and kind of an ability to self-manage. And it makes medical treatments more effective. And on top of that, nutrition is a great way to just prevent skin issues.
Welcome to the Learn Skin podcast with me, Dr. Raja.
And me, Dr. Hadar, where we discuss all things skin.
Join us as we delve into the art and science of skin health in today's episode.
Hey, Raja, can you say the thing I told you to tell them?
Of course. We are board-certified dermatologists. This podcast is meant for educational and informational purposes only and is not considered medical advice, nor does it serve as a substitute for professional care by a doctor or other qualified medical professional. All opinions shared do not express the views of Learn Health, Inc. Let's get to the good stuff.
Hey, Raja, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty well, but my question to you is, what are you eating these days?
Oh, food. We're talking about food. Awesome. You know, I love food. I love everything that I can, chuck down my throat and eat. And then I have to think, wait a minute. I have to answer the ultimate question. I ate that, but am I still pretty? Right? Because there is that tension that goes back and forth, right? We eat, but then how do we feel about it? How does our body react to the food? And one of the most important organs, is the skin. And so there's that gut-skin connection. But a lot of times we don't recognize that can manifest in how we look, not just how we feel. And so we wanted today to talk about food, obviously, but how it connects to how we look and what do we need to do to eat pretty? Does that concept really work?
Well, you know what? We've got an expert to talk to. We've got Dr. Asmi Sanghvi, and she is a board-certified dermatologist. She did the Learn Skin Integrative Dermatology Certificate program, and so she's also an integrative and aesthetic dermatologist. So we are in for a treat. First dad joke, I got it in there, so I'm pretty proud of that. Asmi, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. And, first of all, you did the IDCP, so that already shows that you're smart, and that you know how to make good choices. But tell us, why did you decide to go after you had all this training in dermatology and you kind of starting your aesthetic practice? What made you raise your eyebrow and say, I want to look into the integrative space?
It definitely wasn't the Botox. Sorry. Just have to say that.
Well, I've always known that skin is a lot more than just something that can be controlled by medications. Our mood, our emotions, and what we eat and how we treat our skin, skincare-wise, all plays a really big role in how our skin feels and looks. But really what got me into the space was my own personal story and my skin journey. So I really only had a couple acne pimples growing up. It wasn't really a big deal. I grew up in a vegetarian household, always ate home-cooked meals. My mom is an amazing chef. And then when I got to college, I quickly switched to kind of the more standard Western diet. And my college cafeteria, the vegetarian options were mac and cheese, pizza, nachos, that type of thing. And
yum. They call that, right? It's the standard American diet. SAD stands for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
Big cause of the freshman 15.
I call it the left of 50. That's what gives me 50 pounds.
So yeah, about a few months into college, I'm eating all this kind of newer food for my diet, and I start getting really, really terrible cystic acne, and all over my face, and it's embarrassing. I'm in college, and I'm meeting new people for the first time, and it's not something that I've really experienced before. So it was scary, and it was new, and it was so embarrassing. So that started kind of a long journey of me trying a lot of medications, trying pretty heavy doses of oral medications, antibiotics. Finally, I was put on birth control, and that seemed to help a little bit. But nothing could completely control the acne. And then I started getting into nutrition through med school. Also, I started learning more about food and nutrition and why it's good for our bodies. So I started kind of dabbling in and became vegan and started eating more vegetables, kind of cutting out sugar, cutting out fried foods, more with the goal of helping me just feel better and also perform better in med school, because I always wanted to do dermatology and it's a competitive field. So as I was doing that, I started noticing my skin was getting better and better and my acne was going away. And when I was doing the Western traditional medications, they would work a lot better and they were more effective. And so started getting curious. I got into dermatology and I started practicing in New York City. And I started noticing kind of the similar things with my patients. They would try the Western therapies, the medications, but then when I started talking about food and looking into their diets and making some changes, I started noticing more effective treatments and happier patients. So I really wanted to understand kind of the science behind this. I didn't want to just go with experimentation. And so that inspired me initially to do IDCP, where I learned a lot about Ayurvedic medicine, traditional Chinese medicine, Western botanical medicine, and the kind of lifestyle, the effects of meditation, mindfulness, stress management on skin, and also diet and gut microbiome. And there's a lot of evidence out there and a lot of things that we don't learn in medical school, and we definitely don't learn in dermatology residency. And this inspired me to study this even further. So I enrolled in an Ayurvedic culinary and nutrition program. And that's where I learned to develop this approach to my patients that's evidence-based and more of a team effort rather than the traditional physician-patient relationship, where the expert giving appropriate medical and aesthetic treatments, but also guidelines for my patients to feel empowered and take control of their health and ultimately their well-being through diet and nutrition.
You know, Asmi, one of the things that I find really inspiring about you is that you're obviously a well-experienced physician. I mean, gosh, I didn't realize you took an Ayurvedic culinary course. I want to come and eat some of the food that you've learned to make now. But I think more than that, there's something about just you've kind of imbibed this into your lifestyle. I mean, there are articles about you online just talking about how you kind of focused on how other people would see you, and that kind of got you into thinking about getting a better lifestyle and whatnot. But then you talk about changing your thoughts from how people would view you to more about how you'd feel about yourself and just being more focused, I guess, internally rather than externally. Can you talk about that? And do you bring that same kind of energy to all these other areas that you've grown in now?
Yeah, so I really believe like our skin journey is all about ourselves. So I mean, this applies to a lot of areas, like aesthetics, for example. You can follow a trend, and that's basically you trying to make yourself look good, find beauty in terms of other people. And then you're just constantly chasing this trend and you're never really feeling that inner confidence and really like being happy with yourself. Versus if you do something just for yourself and just to make you feel good, then once you feel good, you're not chasing other people's opinions and other people's thoughts. And it can apply to anything, just what you do, like the thoughts you have. And when really focusing on how the outcome is based on you makes a huge difference compared to always thinking about other people and how they're kind of approaching or thinking about you.
Wow, that's amazing. And I really want to go back for a second because, as Raja said, you mentioned this in passing that you went through a Ayurvedic culinary course. Can you tell us what that is? I think a lot of our listeners, including myself, would be very curious to hear what is in that course, what do you learn, and some of the details, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so in the Ayurvedic culinary school, and Ayurvedic medicine is based on treating the whole body, and that's very much similar to the approach that I take in dermatology, is treating the skin condition by treating everything. And in the culinary school, we learned the principles of Ayurveda is to achieve health is by creating a balance. So everybody has some combination of three doshas. There's the Vata dosha, there's the Pitta dosha, and the Kapha dosha. And it would take me a while to go into details, but Vata is more like the creative, quick thinking type of person. Pitta is like the ambitious, driven, like hardworking person. And Kapha is like the loving, caring, social person. And everybody has some balance of all three. But according to Ayurveda, when disease happens, it's when there's some imbalance. So if you're too much Vata, this can come out in anxiety, or in terms of dermatology, can come out as dry skin or even eczema. If you're too much Pitta, this can come out as frustration and anger. And in dermatology, inflammation, like acne, rosacea. And if you're too much Kapha, this can come out in feeling unmotivated and depressed. And this can come out in your skin and dermatology as like that deep cystic acne or scarring or skin textural issues or oily skin. And the way that Ayurvedic culinary arts work is by figuring out that imbalance and then crafting a meal to placate that imbalance. So if your Vata is out of balance, you want to focus on warm, grounding foods that are cooked and kind of on the heavier side, like healthy fats or complex carbohydrates. And then if your Pitta is out of balance, you want to focus on cooling foods like cilantro or a cool smoothie. And if your Kapha is out of balance, you want kind of drier food. So you're thinking like salads. And it's interesting because what I learned in IDCP and through my patients is this actually works. Like if someone has eczema, dry skin, flaking skin, having them introduce healthy fats and complex carbohydrates helps their skin. If somebody's very inflamed, then adding like those spices like cilantro, cucumber, kind of more cooling foods, and can actually help their skin, which is it's really interesting.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fascinating. And I love that stuff. And I know that Raja is listening, and he probably melted away in pride and happiness. So he's probably going to rejoin us in about 15 minutes when he comes back to consciousness. Because I know that just like the food you're cooking replenishes the soul of your patients and their disease, the words you just said replenished Raja's cognition for years to come. Yeah.
Hadar, absolutely. I mean, just being able to take these concepts and bringing them in, and Asmi, this is amazing. I mean, just the fact that now you've taken that to the next step and figured out a culinary approach to how you might integrate this in with how you're talking to patients. Now, that brings us to the question, because you have this other facet to you, which is like such a skill, being an aesthetic dermatologist. How do you bridge eating food with like being more aesthetic? So how do you eat pretty?
So it's using the similar like Ayurvedic principles and eating for these different conditions. Because while at the extreme, dry skin is eczema, but dry skin can also lead to more apparent wrinkles and drier skin. And having oily skin, like excess kapha, can show up on our skin as cystic acne, but can also show up as larger pores. And having the inflammation can lead to pigmentation or rosacea and blemishes, which all these things, while on the extreme, they're medical dermatology, but at their more like subtle features, they are common things that we're concerned about in terms of our skin looking good and looking pretty.
And so a patient coming to your practice, can you describe to us how your approach will be different? Most patients come in and they get some kind of an assessment. How is your assessment different? And then they get some kind of a prescription, be it for their aesthetic complaint. How does your prescription, quote unquote, changes? How much food does it include? How much medicine does it include?
So a patient comes in and I do the normal physical exam, taking a look at their skin. I ask a lot of questions about their lifestyle, their day-to-day diet, and then I get a sense of their current skin and how they feel their current skin is, and then where they want their skin to be, so their skin goals. And then based on what I'm seeing and talking about their lifestyle, I sometimes do assessments. So I do basic blood work, checking CBC, CMP, iron panel, vitamin D, B12, folate, hormones. Sometimes I do additional testing, like checking the cortisol levels, microbiome, and other tests to check the aging process. And then it's about making simple changes. So it's really hard to completely shift your normal diet. So I like to kind of take it slow. So figure out mostly like what can you add to your diet and not so much of what to remove, because that can feel a little bit more restrictive. So small changes, and each visit I kind of assess and see how they're doing and if we could do any changes. I suggest things like what kind of spices they can add. I do have some recipes on my website and on my Instagram and TikTok that I can guide them to. And then I also do a lot of procedures, so Botox fillers, lasers, microneedling. So for these specific treatments, I give a guideline about what to eat afterwards to help facilitate the healing. And then, of course, I mean, I am a board-certified dermatologist, and I don't just do food. I complement it with medications and treatments as needed. And my goal isn't to have the food replace the medicine. It's to complement it. I love nutrition because it gives my patients a sense of control and kind of an ability to self-manage. And it makes medical treatments more effective. And on top of that, nutrition is a great way to just prevent skin issues. You can eat in a way to help prevent signs of aging, prevent wrinkles, prevent your skin from getting oily and developing acne. So nutrition has so many benefits.
I love what you said because you highlight a really important skill that we often forget in modern medicine, and that is the physician as a coach, right? You mentioned how talking about nutrition and food gives the patient control and allows you to coach them in a way to get to self-care. It's truly innovative because it's something that has been used before or neglected, and now we bring it back in a different iteration, and I think it's fantastic. I think we should be able to do more of that as clinicians. And I think a lot of times I feel like our coaching boils down to take this pill twice a day, as opposed to think about what you eat, think about when you sleep, think about how you move about the world. And I think that's really, really cool and such a great point and a refreshing point, at least to me, to think about the power of talking to patients about nutrition.
Right.
And by the way, speaking about nutrition, I'd be remiss if I did not mention the Integrative Dermatology Symposium that is coming up. This is going to take place in Reno, my friends. In Reno, please join us. I know Raja's going to be there. And the dates are October 27th to the 29th. And the reason I'm mentioning this right now and this point in the podcast is because it's going to be focusing on nutrition. And we all going to come together as a community and figure out how we can help our patients with skin issues to go beyond skin deep and get all the way to how they eat. All right. That was a rhyme I did not plan on.
No, I love it. And I wanted to ask you a question. So in terms of your food, what is your approach to food right now? Are you plant-based and are you eating to your doshas? Did you figure out what your doshas were? It's always fun to see how you treat patients, but I want to see, how did you change maybe how you eat now, especially with all this knowledge that you've gained over time?
Yeah, so my constitution is Vata Pitta. So it fits because I do have really bad eczema, and I'm predisposed to acne when I'm stressed out. So what I do is, number one is focus on hydration. I drink a lot of water. Water is important for maintaining skin internal balance and tissue function. And then I also make sure I'm focusing on eating a variety of foods just to make sure that my gut microbiome is diverse. And I try to avoid drinking any water that has ice in it because as Vata, you want to avoid cold. And I make sure I eat a lot of healthy fats. Healthy fats is a big part of my diet. Now, in terms of plant-based, I would say I'm more plant-focused. I don't eat dairy, but I do eat eggs because I am vegetarian. So I do try to focus on getting a lot of protein in my diet.
You know, for Vata Pitta, I'm in the same group as you, Asmi. And I think that one of the things is I also focus a lot on protein, a lot more on nourishing vegetables. And I also keep the ice out of my water nowadays. And it's made a huge difference. And I also struggle with eczema. So it's pretty interesting to hear your take on things. And yeah, it does make sense. And I love that you're like putting this into context with not only your patients, but yourself too. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, of course.
Well, in Florida, it's really hard to keep the ice out, but we definitely do our best. Hey, before we wrap up here, I wanted to give you a chance to maybe tell people how they can find you, especially folks who are in the Northeast and may want to consult with you.
Yeah, so you can find me on social media. My Instagram is at Dr. Asmi Sanghvi. That's DrAsmiSanghvi. My TikTok is Asmi_Sanghvi. And my website is www.drasmisangvi.com.
Excellent. And I'm sure we'll be listing this in the podcast notes. So scroll down and look for that wherever you catch our podcast. And Asmi, thank you so much for joining us today. This was great. I can't wait for Asmi, the restaurant, to open in a neighborhood near you where you eat your way into beauty. That's unbelievable. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise. That was very cool.
Yes, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much for supporting us through the last several seasons. We love receiving your questions on social media. And now, you can call them in as well.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're a licensed medical practitioner, call us at 424-309-8757 and leave a detailed recording with your name, location, clinical question, and it may just be chosen to be answered live on the next podcast.
We look forward to your submissions. And as always, stay curious.